Welcome to the Freedom Real Estate Podcast with your boy, Andrew Frieden. I am excited and ecstatic to have my boy, Jon Bombaci. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Jon is an absolute beast. So Jon started Candor Realty, which is one of the top investor-focused brokerages in Massachusetts. He also started the simplified REI meetups, which are all over Mass, New Hampshire, and Maine. And he also owns what? 700 doors, or how many doors do you own?
A little over 700 now. Yeah.
Yep, he owns 700 doors. He also owns Simplified Management, which manages over 1,000 doors, right? The list goes on and on and on. And Jon's just absolutely crushing it. And you've been in real estate for how long?
Probably about five years full time. So not all that long full time.
That is absolutely incredible. Talk about scaling very quickly, right? So, Jon, when it comes to real estate, I mean, you obviously are crushing it now, but you have not always been this level of Jon, right? Like, where did you get started? How did you even find out about real estate? Like, what's your story?
I guess I still don't see myself as this level of Jon.
Okay.
There's plenty of big fish out there.
Okay.
We're just in a little pond here, but essentially just one deal at a time, right? Take it one deal at a time. Every deal gets a little bit bigger. Every deal gets a little bit harder, and then once you do a big deal, 50, 60 units, 100 units isn't that much bigger, 120 units that much bigger, and you just kind of build different avenues to acquire properties.
So more or less, you more leaned into acclimation, right? You more leaned into kind of taking on a 3-unit, maybe a cosmetic upgrade, and kind of building your skill set up and taking on bigger and bigger projects.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of develop your niche, get started, focus, get better than the competition. But then every time you accomplish a new challenge, you take on a new problem and you get through it, you add that into your repertoire, and that gives you more lines of sight, that gives you more ability to hit more deals, and it just continues to build on itself.
Okay, so I imagine Jon Bombaci as being Batman, and you got your little belt with all of your cool little gadgets, right? So tell me, what is your niche? What is your specialty? What makes you amazing at real estate today, and what asset classes do you focus on?
Yeah, so I mean, we've tried a bunch of asset classes. We've tried condo conversions, we've tried site unit properties, we've tried a bunch of things, and we've kind of developed our niche as value add multifamily, 2 to 20 unit buildings. Mm-hmm. But where we excel and where we grow, and similar to the way you guys do things, that it doesn't have to be 1 building or 3 buildings or 10 buildings. We just closed on a portfolio in Maine that is all 1 to 20 unit buildings, but there's 33 of them.
Okay.
And so it's the same thing over and over again, but the scale and the complexity of the deal and the number of structures has become a barrier of entry, which allows us to close on those types of deals for prices that probably are good for anybody. The problem is not anybody can get financing, and not anybody can handle the operations that it takes to onboard 33 buildings on the same day.
So there's a reason why private equity and larger real estate investors go for larger properties, right? Because you can have on-site property management and support. With these smaller assets, it's very hard to get the level of support you need to really make the asset perform. So what you really specialize in, what you niche in, is you niche in these smaller assets, and you have really efficient operations that can take on this scattered site portfolio where normal large private equity firms don't have the staff or don't have the capacity, or it probably isn't worth chasing the returns for that.
Correct. Yeah, the scattered site is kind of turned into our differentiator. Everyone wants a 40-unit building. Not everybody wants 4 10-unit buildings scattered across 3 cities. Mm-hmm. But we can buy them for a lot less per unit. And if you know what you're dealing with, a 4-unit is worth more than a 40-unit building on a per unit basis.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I very much had shiny object syndrome, chasing flips, chasing condo conversions, chasing other asset classes. And like you, I landed very much in value add multi. I just feel like there's so many exit strategies. You could flip it. You could, sell it to a house hacker. You could leave it as a rent. You could put a renter in there. You could refi it. There's just so many opportunities to take your money out and to actually turn into a profitable endeavor. So, yeah, I completely get why you lead into that asset class. Now, Jon, before real estate, you were in the finance industry, right?
Yep. So I spent 10 years working in corporate finance, large insurance companies, Liberty Mutual, Travelers Insurance, doing, FP&A, financial accounting. But it's a good segue into real estate because we were evaluating properties on a risk perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so the math was very similar on a real estate side when you look at offices and you look at the way that you consolidate policies versus the underlying assets themselves, which are owning the real estate.
So you were very much a risk adjuster. You determined risk in the insurance company, and you pivoted that skill set to kind of underwriting and finance and kind of putting these deals together. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I was on the back end in insurance, and so you had your risk adjusters, you had your actuaries, you had everybody doing their jobs, and then I got to roll up the scorecard and tell them if they're doing it right or not. And so I got to see all of it, like, the way they grade policies, the way that it impacts the plan, and the way they impact the financials. And so seeing it all come together definitely gave me the perspective, a little different perspective when going into real estate full time.
Okay, so going from the insurance industry to real estate is definitely a completely different industry. So, like, what was the epiphany that you had that opened your eyes to kind of pivot to the real estate asset class?
So I did my first house hack in 2010, the same year I graduated college. And it was a 3-family, and the idea was I didn't want to rent. And so someone said you could buy a 3-family, and I didn't qualify for a single family or a condo because I had student loan debt. I had a nice finance car, which was probably my first mistake getting out of college. And so I did that, lived in it for free for 5 years before I knew what the heck house hacking was, what the heck real estate investing was in general. And then when moved out of 3-family, bought a 2-family, and then got really intentional about real estate back in like 2016, and ended up jumping in full time in 2019. And so it definitely, to the earlier point, it accumulated, it built on itself. It wasn't something I was intentional about. If you went back and asked me in 2012 what I would be doing, I'd be like, I'm aiming for a C-suite, right? But got tired of the corporate world and realized you can do it better and faster with real estate.
Okay, so going back to that 3-unit, when you bought that 3-unit, what happened to your savings rate and how much more money did you save versus prior to that?
So, I mean, I was right out of college. I wasn't saving anything. I think I bought my first 3-family with $10,000 down, and I borrowed some of it from family. Don't tell Fannie and Freddie. And so
I think you're past the statutes of limitations.
Kind of past. I already sold the building, so yeah, you're good. But started with essentially negative savings rate, right? And I had a good job, but I wasn't really savings. The house turned into that forced savings. I had to put money into it. I was living free, but I'd have to pay for the water heater or pay for things as it broke. And then that forced me to save, that forced me to think about money differently. But I wasn't spending $2,000 a month on rent. I was spending, $1,000 a month investing into the property. And I didn't really know what I was doing until 5 years later, where I had equity in the house. I paid off my loans. I paid off my credit cards. Like, having more bills forced me to get intentional about other stuff. And then that allowed me to really trim down my expenses while I was living there.
Okay, so you bought this 3-unit. 5 years later, you figured out, oh crap, maybe there's something to this real estate thing. And then that's when you transitioned to buying, was it 29 units in New Hampshire, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so I spent 3 hours on the bus one day getting down to Boston because I was commuting from essentially the Lowell area to Boston. There was a lot of traffic. And I realized, I didn't want to do this for the next 40 years. At that time, I had 5 units. We had a 3-family that I moved out of and moved into a 2-family, and started looking at my financial picture a little bit differently. I was listening to Bigger Pockets on the bus rides. I was big into Early Retirement Extreme and a whole bunch of the frugality world, Mr. Money Mustache, and looked at my financials for the first time, saying, hey, if I continue to slug away at the W-2, I might be able to retire by 50, which would be great. But if I use my assets and use my 401k, I could buy 30 units and potentially retire in 2 years, living off of the income. And so got the real estate bug from there, decided hey, the risk was worth the reward. And then went out there, bought 29 units. The day we closed on the 12 unit, which made up that portfolio, is the day I put in my 2 weeks notice. And that's the day that they decided it would be my last day in corporate. And ever since, I've been in real estate.
So right when you closed on this 29 unit portfolio, you just said, F it, I'm going full-time real estate.
I put in my 2 weeks notice and said, hey, I'm going to try this real estate thing for a while, see if it worked out. I figured, worst case scenario, I go back into finance in 2 or 3 years. It's like, it's fine. And then my boss basically said, today's your last day. And then jumped into real estate, and COVID hit probably 3 months later. And then kind of scaled from there.
So what was the scariest part about leaving your W-2?
I mean, I think you experienced when you did the same thing, but I mean, it's mindset. By the time you do it, you realize you should have done it a long time ago. And then you kind of sit down and you figure out what's the worst case scenario, and your brain is weird. Like, the worst case scenario you jump to is, your mom's disappointed in you and you're living on the street, and like, you jump to these crazy worst case scenarios in your head. But then it's like, all right, like, what's actually going to happen? Like, could I get a job at McDonald's? Could I get a job at Starbucks? Like, the worst case scenario is still better than the way 90% of people that are in existence on Earth live their day-to-day life. And so, like, that realization of my worst case scenario is a great case scenario for most people gave me the courage to say, hey, let's do this thing, because if it works out, it could be incredible. And if it doesn't work out, it's still a pretty good life.
I think you brought up a concept earlier about acclimation, and when you leave your W-2, it's like your mind jumps to step 20. Like, I'm gonna just instantly live under the bridge, right? Like, your life progressively gets worse and worse over time, and you could take corrective action, right? But your mind does mess with you. It's just you think the ultimate worst thing's gonna happen, right? And I've experienced that as well. But like, to your point, like, you logically approach it like, okay, I have 1-2 years of burn rate. Maybe I have spent $3,000 a month. I got that amount of cash in the bank. Like, you have time to correct it, right? And I think people don't take that into consideration. They just think the end case, worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, I had an uncle that lost all his money in real estate. So like, you're going to lose all your money in real estate. But it's like, but it builds up to it. You typically don't wake up, come out of bed and all of a sudden go from making money to being bankrupt. Like, sure. It chips away itself. So,
just going back to those 29 units, I know you're definitely sly when it comes to putting deals together. So I know for a fact you must have incorporated some creative financing in those deals, right? Did you do any seller credits? Did you ask for any seller finance? Did you ask for agent commissions? Like, what did you do when you brought less cash to that deal?
Yes, I essentially bought 24 units all in a very short period of time, and I already had the 5 units from before. But essentially, I bought $1 million worth of real estate with less than $100,000.
Wow! So essentially 10% down.
Essentially 10% down. But they were all conventional notes. They all said that you put 25% down. But basically what I did was, I was in this little market up in New Hampshire, Littleton, New Hampshire, which has since improved, like all of New Hampshire has. And essentially I put something under contract. I had the money for 25% down on the first one. But there were some issues during the inspection. There were some issues with the rent roll. There's some issues with the tenants. I found out there was a lawsuit. And so I was able to buy the first building, which was like $260,000. I bought it with a $50,000 seller credit. And the bank let me take that directly off the HUD, directly off the closing. And so if you do the math, because we do it all the time, if you buy a $260,000 property, 25% down is what? $75,000. And the bank and the seller gave me 50 of it. And so now I only had to bring $25,000 to closing. And so just did that on the first one, and it worked out well. And so then the second one, $360,000, found a major electrical issue. I went into it with a $20,000 seller credit, and that boosted up to $80,000 seller credit. And then did that on the third one too. And so essentially every time I show up, I gave them pre-approval, I gave them everything showing the 25%. But when the closing table came around, I'm putting less than 10% down because I was able to use inspection items. I was able to use real hardships that the sellers were having in order to get those seller credits, and we were able to recognize them on the HUD.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a lot of really good points about scaling your portfolio. It's, utilizing seller credits and utilizing, seller finance notes can really help in making your money go farther, right? Like, you essentially got 2.5 times the amount of units you normally would, right? Because you brought 10% to get $1 million worth of assets when you normally would have had to bring 25% down. So, I think our audience can, use this as a takeaway. It's like, when you're making offers, if you have 20-30% in the bank, like maybe you make 3 offers with a 10-50% seller finance note and 10% down, right? Like you can make that money go farther if you use that in a more intentional manner. So I think that's a great lesson learned with going to 29 units. But jumping from 29 units to over 5, 6, 700 units in a mere 5 years, like that takes some dramatic changes. Like, what are some key strategies you utilized that even made that possible, right? Because I'm sure your approach at 29 units is far different than your approach at 5, 6, 700 doors.
Yeah, and I'd say with everything, like if I had time to go through the whole experience, like everything that I've done is not intentional. Everything I've done is situational. Everything that I've done is, I believe in just-in-time learning. Like you could sit there with try to learn everything about real estate and you'll just drive yourself nuts. I believe in find a good deal and you'll either make it happen and it's meant to be, or you won't make it happen and it's not meant to be. But really getting out there and forcing yourself to learn has been like our strategy. And so the first time we raised money outside of partnership, we thought we needed to bring $2 million to closing on this big monster building, 132 units in Lowell, which was our first big building. We thought we only need 2 million, and we had the 2 million accounted for with close network of friends and everything else. And then all of a sudden something changed. We already were out of pocket a couple $100,000 on due diligence, and now we needed to raise $5 million to close.
Wow.
And so that was like, again, we got into a good deal and we learned how to raise capital because we had to. We had 90 days to raise $3 million to close on a building, or we're going to lose a couple $100,000 of due diligence money. And so we figured out how to do that. We got to closing. It was a great project. Our investors did very well. And then over time, we've just kind of continued with that approach. As you find a good deal, you put it under contract, and you figure it out. And a lot of times you get money from weird places. You get money from people that you don't think have money, but you put it out into the world. You build your network. We got the meetups. We got Candle Realty. We have a big network. And so we've been able to leverage that network to help us close on some of these assets where we might not have all the money accounted for in day one.
So more or less, you put the reps in and you believe in your ability to make it happen.
Yeah. But yeah. And then you have your contingencies in place, where if you can't make it happen, you don't lose. But essentially you force yourself into awkward situations. You force yourself to grow, or what the other analogy is, you jump off the cliff and you build your plane on the way down. And that's fine as long as you have a giant safety net at the bottom so you don't crash and burn. But that's been a lot of our methodology is, take the next leap and figure it out. Knowing that you're not gonna crash in the bottom because there's some sort of a safety net there.
Yeah, so I think a good analogy is burning the boats, right? Like when your back's against the wall and you have to fight, like you make it freaking happen. Right?
And I love that analogy, right? You show up to the new world, you burn your boat so you can't go back, and then you figure it out. And like if there's no retreat, you only got one option.
Yep. So, I think this kind of leads into the next point, and you kind of alluded to this earlier. It's like, you often describe real estate, as a team sport, right? Can you explain what you mean by that and how partnerships have played a role in you scaling your portfolio so quickly?
Yeah, so I mean, we say it a lot. So we believe real estate's a team sport. The stronger your team, the easier this gets. And the reason why we're able to solve really hard problems and make outsized profits on them is because we have strong teams in place to solve hard problems. And so from my standpoint, I'm kind of a partner slut, right? I jump from group to group. I build the team as I go. Sometimes people bring in capital. Sometimes people bring in experience. Sometimes people are can solve a problem that I can't. Learning how to work with others in a way that isn't confrontational. Learning how to set up OAs and compensation agreements that aren't confrontational has become our secret weapon, right? So like, I know a lot of people struggle with partnerships because it's set up wrong from the get-go. And if it's set up wrong, it creates conflict. If you set it up correctly in the beginning, you're working around a real asset and you have your contingency plans in place if someone doesn't perform or if something goes wrong. And so over the years, we've kind of perfected that and jumped from deal to deal, group to group, bringing in people that we need in order to solve a problem, but in a way that doesn't create conflict with the rest of the group.
I think you're truly a genius at putting a deal together because you understand that a deal is simply a formula and there's variables, right? And the three variables are, time, experience, and money, right? And you have the ability to bring in any one of those attributes, right? And identify what the partners that bring, what are the other attributes the partner bring and put them in the right slot where they're in their genius, right? And I think when you get really good at that, you can turn real estate from a solo sport to a team sport and really scale dramatically.
You can go fast by yourself, you can go far with a team, right? And if you keep building on the team, you can go farther and farther.
So, I think at this point, obviously real estate has done very well for you, right? But like going back to, growing pains, right? Like what are some major challenges you faced with scaling a portfolio of this size, and what did you overcome and how did you overcome it? And like, I would just love for you to give like some practical, real advice for our audience.
Yeah. So I'd say, so in the beginning, right, my first couple of buildings, the challenge was essentially representation. I had a very hard time finding agents that understood what it was that I was doing, why I was doing it, and how to help us do it. Like I closed on my first 10 unit and found out the agent that I used doesn't own any real estate, has never sold a multifamily before. And like that was frustrating. That was eye-opening, where like, hey, like in this industry, people will sell it like a used car. They don't need to know what they're selling. They just need you to buy it and for them to get paid. And so early on, that was the challenge. That was the obstacle, is how do I work with people that understand what I'm trying to do in markets that they know? And that's why Candor Realty was born, was so I could take investor focused agents and use them to help me overcome my problem of not knowing what's going on in Worcester, not knowing what's going on in Dover, and being able to call somebody and be like, hey, Andrew, what's going on in Worcester? And know that our interests are aligned, know that you're thinking about it in the same lens that I am, and I'm going to get the answer that I need, not the answer that someone's going to sell me. And so Candor Realty was really created so that I would have access to people that knew what was going on in the market and knew why and what we were trying to do.
So, I think that's a beautiful thing. It's like, when you run across an issue or a problem, rather than you view it as something, a roadblock, you view it as an opportunity, right? And you viewed not getting the proper investment advisory help as a problem that should be solved. And that resulted in you creating Candor, an investor-focused brokerage, right? That resulted in you creating, these meetups all across the states because there was a deep desire to learn real estate investing. That resulted in you creating a large property management company because people needed help managing their properties because they didn't know what the hell they were doing, right?
Yeah, and so like the meetups were born because we wanted to expand and we wanted to grow the network. We needed access to funding for some of these larger projects. Like the meetup started right after essentially the $5 million raise that came out of nowhere. And we realized we need to expand our network. And then the management company really happened because we had a third-party property manager that took us a long time to find. The owner of the company died and they were going to shut down the management company. And so we had a problem to solve. And so we started our own management company. And so it's just one of those things where, to your point, a problem comes up and we look at it as an opportunity to solve the problem for ourselves and then offer those services to others, as opposed to, just getting frustrated that real estate doesn't work and real estate is hard.
So, you're so vertically integrated in so many areas. You have your hand in so many pots that all kind of lead to the same end product, right? How does that really kind of give you an edge in this market? And we're talking about owning the broker, we're talking about owning the syndication company, owning the construction company, owning the property management company. Like, how does kind of having all of those kind of pieces in place kind of play to your advantage?
So, as you know, we just did our quarterly boot camp, which we were titling Life Cycle of the Deal, which is essentially like, stole it from Lion King, right? Circle of life, circle of the deal.
I didn't even realize that.
Lion King, right? So stole it from Walt Disney. Don't tell them, they're good at suing people. But yeah, I mean, the idea is we look at real estate as it's a circle, right? You buy a property, you manage a property, you improve the property, and then you exit the property. And there's a lot of stuff that can happen through in there. But essentially, if you exit the property and it starts someone else's circle, like it just continues. And so along the way, we solved the purchase with Candor. We solved the management with Simplified Management. We added construction into the management company, and then we solved the exit again with Candor Realty. And so we created this circle that allows us to say, hey, from the moment someone says, hey, you should look at 123 Main Street, to the moment that we're ready to dispose of it, we're able to control it all in-house. And that allows us to help clients where they don't have to use all of our aspects, but if they're getting into something and they need help, we've had to deal with it. There isn't, I mean, I can probably say this confidently, there isn't a problem you can run into in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, or Maine with any real estate property that you're dealing with that we haven't dealt with ourselves firsthand or know how to find the solution very quickly through our network.
So that's a very interesting approach. Is you view real estate as a life cycle, right? Like you view real estate as like, you know how us as humans, we're a baby, we grow up to adults and we age out, you know, as elders, right? Like you view the piece of real estate in the middle of that and you took every component of that life cycle and you've built a business around that.
Yep, to shepherd it through. Take it from being a baby to take it from making us lots of money.
Yeah, no, and then have it reborn again when it's sold to somebody else, right?
And that someone else could be a network or be someone else, but it doesn't matter because the real estate continues to exist, and then that person will take it through the same life cycle.
Yep, that's a very interesting approach. I never thought about kind of building businesses from that perspective, right? So, you know, I know a big part of you building all these organizations is helping other people reach financial independence. Like, why are you so passionate about this, and what is your goal in helping people reach this, you know, the top of the mountain?
Yeah, so I mean that's been the mission of Candor Realty since it's founded, right? So I found Candor Realty from a point of lean financial independence and was like, how do I help other people? And so Candor Realty was the cornerstone there of helping people buy their first investment property instead of a single family or condo, teaching them the house hack, teaching them to get ahead on their financials in a way that I got lucky without really doing it intentionally. And then from there, everything's kind of built on itself. As our portfolio has grown, we've had to solve harder and harder challenges. And my goal is always to bring those challenges in-house so that we can control them a little bit more. But from my perspective, it's like a good real estate client, someone that we can help, is successful in their self, right? So if you help someone with their first deal and they're successful, they're going to come back to you for the second, the third, and the fourth. And then if they have a good real estate experience and they reach financial independence through real estate, which we've seen from a Ryan Emmerich and a Matt Davis, who have been, you know, on your podcasts, now they start helping other people, and now they start growing it, and the compounded effect gets out of control. A lot of brokerages, they look at it as, hey, how do I sell someone this house and make the commission? We look at it, how do we turn this person into a multiplier of everything that we're doing? And the easiest way to do that is to make sure they're successful, because they'll naturally spread the mission. They'll naturally help other people if they can get ahead themselves.
So it's more or less a
It's selfish. It's extremely selfish of us, because I want people to be successful so we can do more business. But as a result, they're successful and they can spread the knowledge. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I look at it as it's also incredibly selfish for us to try to make sure other people reach financial independence.
I was thinking self-fulfilling prophecy, but thanks for closing the loop on that.
Yeah, it's very selfish of us. Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's honestly an ingenious approach, because what you're really doing at the end of the day is you're really just intentionally building your network larger and larger and larger, right? And as we all know, like your net worth is your network, right? The more people you connected with, the more people you provide value, the more successful you're going to be.
Yep. So the first step is build the network. The second step is make the network more valuable. And there's two ways to do that, right? You can go out and you can try to look for more important people to add into the network. But what I find is more important people in real estate, like, they're probably not people I want to hang out with. And so what I like to do is I like to take my network and make my network more valuable by improving the people within it. If I can take someone that's just starting out and get to the point where they're successful and they can add to the group, that's a much more genuine connection than me going, you know, help someone build from 2 units to 100 units. That's someone that's going to add to our culture and network a lot better than if I go out and try to take someone that has 100 units already and drag them into our network.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a really good point, and John more or less helped mentor me in growing my portfolio, and it's like, my skill set now versus when I first started with you, like it's completely different, right? Like I'm sure you would be willing to partner with deals with me now, versus when I first started, probably not, right? Because over time that network helped build me up into the investor I am today.
Yeah, no, and I mean, as people improve and as people get bigger and better at this thing, it makes the whole network better. Like you've added a tremendous amount to our network. Like can't measure it. Tremendous amount's been added to the network. That's all because we wanted to help you early on without really knowing what the payback would be. But you do that over and over again. You help as many people as to the best of your ability, and you don't know how they're going to impact other people in the future.
Yeah, those are all really good points. And I think my next point I just want to mention is, and you and I were alluding to this earlier. It's like, what is one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to real estate?
So I mean, the biggest misconception right now in the current market is people buying for cash flow. And that's because you have to buy for cash flow because it needs to be an asset. So the asset has to make money. But I mean, even if you hit your projections, and that's hard right now because of everything that's going on in the economy, but even if you hit your projections of 10% cash flow, right? 10% cash flow on a building that we're sitting in right now is probably what, $5,000 a year, $10,000 a year, but it's a $800,000 building. And so if it appreciates at 3% a year or 5% a year, it's adding $40,000 a year to the worth.
Yep.
And the reality is your $5,000 to $7,000 a year will go quick if you have to replace a roof or replace a water heater or you have to do a unit turn. That cash flow gets eaten up and gets reinvested into the building. You have to have the cash flow so that you don't fall behind and you don't get hurt. But the real value is in owning the asset and just letting it do its thing. The appreciation is where you get ahead in real estate. The cash flow is where you stay alive.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a lot of really good points. It's like in real estate, cash flow is very much a defensive mechanism, and the offensive mechanisms are things you would never think about, right? Like you said, the appreciation, the forced appreciation, or the market appreciation, the mortgage pay down, but especially the tax benefits. Like you and I know that very well, just looking at our tax return every year, right? Like you and I probably effectively pay a 1 to 3% tax rate because of real estate. Right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you don't know what I'm talking about. But I don't think people fully realize how tax efficient real estate is, and more or less, it could really save you 20 to 30% in every dollar you bring in if you really know how to play a tax game.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, and I like the way that you phrase it. Like the cash flow is the defense, right? And a lot of people think of the cash flow as the offense. Yep. But the cash flow is really the defense. The cash flow is what allows you to keep your building when something bad happens. Everything else that comes with real estate, that's really the value. The cash flow is just the means that allows you to enjoy the rest of the benefits.
Absolutely. So for somebody, feeling overwhelmed, listening, wanting to get started in real estate, what is a small step they could take right now to kind of push their dream forward?
So I'd say probably two things. The easiest thing, get out there, go to a meetup. Whether it's our meetup or someone else's meetup, I don't really give a crap. Just go to a meetup, get out there, get in the room with people that are doing what it is you want to do. Because I promise you can get answers to questions that you haven't learned to ask yet. And without having answers to those questions, you're going to find a lot of excuses not to move forward. The second thing I would kind of recommend, and I'm doing a presentation on this, and I want to kind of build it into a lot of what we do, but is try to find your niche. There's something that you're better at than I am. And there's something that you're better at than most of the other real estate investors out there. Your job isn't to do 100-unit portfolio next week. Your job is to close on one property and get started. And the faster you can identify what's your niche, the easier that's going to be. So what I mean is, if you're an electrician, look for a property with electrical problems. If you're a plumber, look for a property with plumbing issues. If you're a project manager, if you're well organized, if you have energy, if you have money, there's really anything that you could bring to the table that's different than, the 100 people that are sitting in that meetup with you. One of the reasons why I wanted you to go to that meetup is to identify what makes you different. Talk to people, see what they're doing, see where you have an edge, and then focus on that edge. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know one thing better than everyone else in the room and figure out how to capitalize on that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think, one of the reasons you and I are so successful is we know who we are, right? And I think added to John's point is, maybe you take some personality tests and understand what you're good at versus what you're not good at versus what gives you energy versus what takes energy away from you. Because ultimately, if you're good at something and it gives you energy, you will eventually be an all-star at that thing.
And then you learn to partner and you work with people that have different passions, different energy,
Exactly.
different focus. And so if you hate dealing with tenants, which I am not good at dealing with tenants, you find someone that you can partner with, or you build a management company so you can get a freaking away from it, but you find a way to get yourself out of the stuff you don't enjoy so you can focus on the stuff you do enjoy.
Honestly, John's a pushover. I rented for him for 3 months, never paid this guy rent. So I think this will lead into our final segment, right? So when it comes to Candor and Jon Bombaci, like, what's next? You've obviously already achieved a lot of your dreams. Like, what is your end goal for your company and for yourself?
I mean, our goal right now is, we're growing the mission. We're our goal is 5 states in 5 years. We're in our 5th year. We're in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. We're going to launch in Rhode Island, Connecticut by the end of the year. So we'll hit that goal. And then the goal is really to expand from there. More meetups, more actionable training, but really focusing on helping people reach financial independence, because it's the biggest, selfishest thing I can do. And then grow the network off of that. By helping people get ahead, our network will get stronger. The people within it will be able to help more people grow. And the easier this thing's going to be, we're working on a 500 unit portfolio up in Maine, like monster, giant. Like if we can get over that hump and get it to close, it's going to put a lot of things on the table that'll allow us to grow in a more intentional way in the future.
Yeah, I mean, when you're one of the top landlords in one given state, you kind of have a little pull to do things, right?
And then the game changed a little bit, which we're starting to get into, where landlord associations and political events, like eventually we'll probably grow to the point that we need to have those things in place. I'm not there yet, so we're just keeping our head down and trying to grow.
With more success comes more eyes.
With more success comes the ability to change things that drive you nuts. So similar to what we talked about before, where there's problems in the way our laws work. I have to act within the laws right now because we're not big enough to change them. But I mean, the idea would be is as we grow, as we have more clout, as our network gets bigger, hopefully there's a world in which we can influence some of the things that don't make any freaking sense that are happening on a state and federal level.
And that's why I love John's, because when I see a problem, he sees an opportunity to grow, right? And he sees problems that he can fix and make better, right? So I commend you, John. I commend you. So I think this is kind of one of our final questions is where do you see the biggest opportunity in the market today?
So there's a lot of soft spots in the market that I think are coming out. We've seen rents plateau. We've seen some people get in trouble over the last couple of years where they didn't quite understand exactly what they're buying or how they were doing it. I think as rates continue to come down, I think the market's going to continue to stay status quo. So I think the biggest opportunities right now are finding people that are a little bit over leveraged, finding people that have some sort of an outside influence that's causing a distress. There's plenty of good deals out there right now. I think they're going to be more prevalent over the next 6 to 12 months. And I would just kind of say, focus on your niche, focus on finding someone with a distress that aligns with what you're looking to do. And there's tons of opportunity right now. And there's a good chance that the next 6 to 12 months is the best time to buy real estate over the next 5 years. If rates continue to come down, if stuff happens with our economy where, especially in New England, we have a lack of supply, we have a lack of the ability to put new units on the table. Now is a great time to buy great deals. And there's plenty of them out there if you know how to identify them.
Yeah, I mean, the best time to start a business, and some of the top organizations in the world started this way, is during a recession, right? And, I can't confidently say it's a recession according to any economic metrics, right? But what I can tell you is it is surely a recession based off vibe, right? And, the economy and the stock market, it definitely very much moves with human emotion. So I could definitely see right now being a fantastic time to invest. Is when other people don't want to invest, that's the time you should invest.
And there's a good chance that we have a natural floor in New England just because of the uniqueness of our market and some of the building code and some of the legal issues out there where we might have already seen the bottom and people probably haven't realized it at scale.
Yeah, it's great advice. So, Jon, appreciate you coming on here. Now, tell audience members, where can they learn more about Jon Bombaci and all the amazing things you were doing?
Easiest way, check out our website, Kendall Realty, check us out on Facebook, but more importantly, come to one of our meetups or just go to any meetup, right? That's your homework. If you haven't been to a meetup yet, go to a meetup. If you want to meet us in person, come to a meetup. Andrew always hosts the Worcester meetup every month. I'm always at the Lowell meetup, but I try to get out there as often as I can. That's the best place to track us down and find us is get us in the environment where we're intentionally giving back because we have time and we have energy to do it then. If you show up at my office unannounced, I can't guarantee the results, but if you get me in the venue where I am giving back my time intentionally, very happy to help you with any problem you might have, absolutely free of charge.
Great. And, I do like to leave our audience with one final gem. So, Jon, if you could go back in time to your 20-year-old self and give you one piece of advice to ensure your success in the future, what piece of advice would that be?
Probably don't sweat the small stuff. And that's probably where I still struggle today. And my business partners can tell you a little bit too, is something goes wrong, something could have been better, something we missed in due diligence that we should have caught. It drives me nuts. I build a process around not missing that thing again. But the actuality comes in and it's what did that actually cost you? And it's it cost our property manager a little bit of frustration. And it's so how much money did that mistake cost you? And it's not much at all. And so I get frustrated when things don't go in a way that I can predict. But my biggest advice to myself when I was 20 or biggest advice to myself now even still is try to keep things in perspective. Things are always going to go wrong, but don't sweat the small stuff. Focus on the big things, push forward with intention, and let the little things go.
You heard that here, folks. Let the little things go. I just want to thank Jon for coming on the Freedom Real Estate Podcast, and I just want to thank our audience for listening, and you have a great day. Take care.